In an unusual school named Jerome Horwitz Elementary, fun is forbidden, and even laughter is strictly prohibited during recess. Two creative students, George and Harold, share a passion for making comics, and their favorite creation is Captain Underpants. The comic revolves around a superhero born on an underpants-wearing planet who later finds himself on Earth, raised by dolphins, as George cleverly writes it, while Harold brings the story to life with his illustrations. Excited about the possibility of success, George and Harold dream of publishing their masterpiece. Unfortunately, their dreams are shattered by their harsh principal, Mr. Krupp. He cruelly tears their comic apart, summons the kids to his office, and accuses them of altering a school notice with an inappropriate message. Despite the strict rules, George and Harold persist in their daily pranks, hoping to bring smiles to their fellow students' faces in an otherwise joyless environment. Mr. Krupp fails to understand the students' needs and relentlessly searches for evidence to punish the mischievous duo. However, so far, George and Harold have managed to escape punishment. They continue their playful behavior, motivated by the desire to lift the spirits of their fellow inmates, who feel trapped within the school's suffocating routine. The students lack opportunities for sports, arts, or music and are fed up with the system, with the exception of Melvin, who focuses solely on grades and seeks favor from Mr. Krupp by complaining about his peers. As the weekend approaches, the teacher and students hope for a respite from the school's oppressive atmosphere, but Mr. Krupp announces a science exhibition, yet another event that ruins their weekends with unnecessary obligations. The students can't help but smile once they finally escape the confines of the school. In contrast, George and Harold find solace in their treehouse, where they spend their time crafting new creative stories while Harold brings them to life with his illustrations. As night falls, George and Harold retire to bed, excited for a carefree set ahead, planning to enjoy a lazy day in their pajamas. However, their plans take an unexpected turn when their parents remind them about the science exhibition. Due to Mr. Krupp's dismissal of the science teacher for seeking a weekend with his family, the burden of the exhibition now falls on Melvin, who proceeds to bore everyone with his inventions. Bored and desperate to liven things up, George and Harold notice Mr. Krupp dozing off and seize the opportunity to play a prank on Melvin's invention. The machine starts hilariously shooting toilet paper all over the place, much to the amusement of the students. When Mr. Krupp wakes up, he reprimands Melvin for the failure of his invention. Thinking they escaped unnoticed, George and Harold are shocked when they're called into the office the following day. Unknown to them, one of Melvin's inventions was a turtle equipped with a camera that recorded the whole incident. With the evidence in hand, Mr. Krupp takes drastic action against the mischievous duo and decides to split them up into separate classes. This news greatly worries George and Harold, who have been best friends since kindergarten, fearing that their bond will be broken and their lives will lose their spark without each other's company. Determined to save their friendship, the kids devise a plan and decide to steal the incriminating turtle. The following morning, they keep a close watch on Mr. Krupp as he leaves his office to follow his crush, Edith. Seizing the opportunity, they sneak into his room in search of the turtle. Though they fail to find it, they do stumble upon their confiscated belongings. Suddenly, Mr. Krupp returns and secures the turtle to his leg, making it impossible for the kids to steal it. He takes out the class transfer papers, intending to separate George and Harold permanently. However, George surprises Mr. Krupp by brandishing his toy ring and playfully threatening to hypnotize him with it. The principal laughs it off his childish antics, but to everyone's astonishment, something extraordinary happens. The classroom items begin floating, and Mr. Krupp falls into a deep sleep. George and Harold are astonished to witness the incredible power of the toy ring as it actually works. They playfully command Mr. Krupp to transform into a chicken, and to their amusement, he starts behaving like one. Both kids have a great time joking around with Mr. Krupp, but soon they come up with a mischievous idea. They command him to become Captain Underpants. In an instant, the principal sheds his clothes, grabs the curtains as a makeshift cape, and fully embraces the persona of Captain Underpants. What begins as harmless fun turns into a nightmarish situation when Captain Underpants leaps out of the window, convinced that he must save the city. George and Harold desperately chase after him, witnessing his misguided attempts to help others, which usually lead to more trouble. They fail to catch him before he climbs up a tall building, mistaking a giant balloon for a menacing monster. Thankfully, the resourceful kids use a crane to rescue Captain Underpants. On their way back to the treehouse, they manage to dodge a policeman by convincing him that Mr. Krupp is their elderly uncle suffering from sleepwalking. Back in their treehouse, the kids try to figure out a way to cure Mr. Krupp's transformation. Accidentally spilling water over him, they discover that it reverts him back to his normal self. Realizing that watering him again will turn him back into Captain Underpants, they repeatedly drench him until he falls unconscious. Concerned for the sad and lonely life Mr. Krupp leads, they take him back to his house, which appears quite ordinary but reflects the solitude he must feel. Feeling sympathy for him, they decide to continue playing with him so he won't change their classes. The following morning, George and Harold make a grand entrance to school with loud music and disco lights, provoking Mr. Krupp's fury. He hastily signs the class transfer papers, thinking that he is finally rid of their mischief. However, the kids remain unfazed and promptly splash water on him, transforming him back into Captain Underpants. They lead him to a storeroom and cleverly inform him that he is now on a top-secret mission where he must act as the principal in disguise. Upon arriving at the office, Captain Underpants encounters a peculiar individual named Professor P. He claims to be applying for the position of science teacher. Despite having no prior teaching experience and presenting a portfolio filled with dangerous and inhumane experiments, Captain Underpants, now fascinated by Professor Poopapant's evil motives, hires him immediately, unaware of the danger the mad scientist poses to the school. Professor Poopapants has been researching ways to eliminate human laughter and sees the school as the perfect place to conduct his deadly experiments. George and Harold quickly discover the sinister truth about Professor Poopapants and rush to the principal's office to discuss how to deal with the new threat. Although Mr. Krupp temporarily returns to his normal self while they're away, he easily transforms back into Captain Underpants with a simple snap of the fingers. Using Captain Underpants to their advantage, the kids manage to access Professor Poopapant's file to uncover his last name, which happens to be Poopapants. Finding it hilariously fitting, George and Harold create another Captain Underpants comic, featuring Professor Poopapants as the main villain, causing the entire school to burst into laughter at the absurdity. As the school laughs at Professor Poopapants, he reminisces about a past experience where he was about to receive an award for his marvelous inventions, only to have the audience burst into laughter at his name. This humiliation sparked his determination to eradicate laughter from the world. Professor Poopapants, under the principal's hypnotic influence, is advised to enjoy the comic, but instead, it gives him an idea. He decides to research Melvin, a student with no sense of humor at all. Scanning reveals that Melvin's brain lacks the part responsible for laughter, which intrigues the evil scientist. Meanwhile, George, Harold, and Captain Underpants are busy making the school more fun by organizing an orca show with silly sounds and reopening the art room. However, Captain Underpants takes it a step further and orders an entire carnival on the school grounds. While everything seems perfect, the kids face a challenge in keeping Mr. Krupp away from water, as it is becoming increasingly difficult. Despite their efforts, Mr. Krupp ends up getting wet due to unexpected rain. Filled with anger over the damage to his school, he takes out his frustrations on George and Harold, punishing them by placing them in separate classes. The two friends feel a deep sense of loss and despair as they now feel like they're sitting in two completely different worlds, unable to unite like they once were. As Professor Poopapants completes his research on Melvin, he hatches a sinister plan to use him as a tool to eradicate laughter from the rest of the world. With his enlarging gun, he turns Melvin's robotic toilet into a massive monster. However, to power the robot, they need an abundant source of energy, something as potent as a nuclear power plant. Melvin suggests an even more toxic source, the school cafeteria leftovers. Poopapants uses this unconventional fuel to bring terror to the entire city. George and Harold, unable to bear the boring class, rendezvous in the restroom where they quickly learn about the city's peril. Poopapants is attacking the school, using an instrument attached to Melvin to steal the students' laughter. The two friends hide away, determined to preserve their sense of humor and unwilling to live in a world devoid of jokes and pranks. Their only hope lies in Captain Underpants, but without his superpowers, he seems helpless. Poopapants captures the poor captain and ruthlessly beats him while George and Harold attempt to reason with Melvin to abandon the mad scientist's side, but he remains resolute. In a last-ditch effort, the kids apologize to Poopapants for teasing his name and advise him to take it lightly and learn to laugh at himself. However, Poopapants refuses to let go of his bizarre revenge and throws Captain Underpants into a giant toilet. He then seizes the kids, intent on stripping them of their ability to laugh. Surprisingly, the laughter part in their brains turns out to be larger than their brains themselves. Poopapants activates his laser at full power, causing the laughter part to shrink nearly to oblivion. Just when it seems all hope is lost, Poopapants mentions the planets he plans to conquer, which reminds George and Harold of a silly Uranus joke they made in kindergarten. The kids burst into laughter so powerful that it destroys Poopapants' laser device, returning the students' ability to laugh. However, Poopapants remains determined and attacks again with his shrinking gun. George and Harold frantically run about, praying for a miracle. Suddenly, Captain Underpants emerges from the toilet, empowered by the toxic fluid, gaining superpowers. He confronts Poopapants and snatches his shrinking gun. However, in his typical foolish manner, Captain Underpants accidentally transforms the mad scientist into a huge monster and the school into a tiny building, containing tiny students and teachers, symbolizing society's efforts for education. George and Harold successfully use the shrinking gun to reduce Poopapants to a miniature size, and the defeated villain flees on a bee, finally leaving the city in peace. Captain Underpants, the legendary hero, receives praise and gratitude from the relieved citizens. However, knowing he can't remain for long, the kids understand they must restore Mr. Krupp. George takes off the ring and smashes it with his shoe, breaking the hypnosis spell. Mr. Krupp returns to his senses and hurries back to his house. The best friends make a heartfelt promise to always be there for each other, regardless of being in separate classes. However, they are determined to improve Mr. Krupp's life. For that purpose, George and Harold write fake love letters, one for Mr. Krupp and another for Edith. The touch of love works its magic, and the once grumpy principal now wears a smile from ear to ear. He has learned the value of happiness and is no longer behaving rudely. Witnessing their principal enjoying his date, George and Harold feel proud of their efforts to bring some joy into his life. Unbeknownst to the kids, more surprises await them. The robotic toilet has transformed other toilets into creepy monsters. But the biggest surprise is that Mr. Krupp can still transform into Captain Underpants with just a snap of his fingers. With his unique but passionate presence, no villain can harm the public. This experience teaches George and Harold a valuable lesson. Rude individuals aren't always the bad guys. They might just need a little love and kindness to bring back their smiles. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more interesting movies.